we're gonna destroy the Empire. Oh shit, we destroyed the Empire. Oh shit, we became the Empire. It's been a minute since I made a video. I was reading these and also these. And since I have like just not very much chill, I also read all of these, and also these, and also, this. And you might be like, internet guy, that is just a pathological amount of reading. And to that I say, yes, it absolutely is. I used to, as a younger person, judge people who went into fantasy binges like this, and then I got PTSD. And let me tell you, sometimes a little escapism is a lot healthier than some of the other things that you could be doing with your time. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but like the world itself is a little overwhelming right now, specifically with Thanksgiving on the horizon. We're in the reality wars. Like the Cold War has transmogrified into the reality war, and it seems like the people very near and dear to us are living in completely different epistemological realities. I should also say I reread Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, and this trilogy, one of which I'm missing. It's a mark of how stressed I am that I've misplaced a book. This does not happen very frequently, but those Octavia Butler's a little bit too real for today, so we're gonna zoom back into the world of fantasy. And I actually have a revision about this, because the way that I was construing fantasy as escapism was that escapism was a way of avoidance of processing of the reality of the world. It's kind of in the name, fantasy, but I think this I have after however many tens of thousands of pages, I have a revision of that worldview, and it's this: fantasy is often the only way to process things, because it is the only way that we can hold things at a safe enough distance to actually look at them for longer than half a second at a time. Put differently, sometimes the world is so monstrous, the only way to imagine dealing with it is to imagine dealing with monsters instead. I have plenty of thoughts on Brandon Sanderson. There could be a million videos that I could make on grief, on trauma, on imperialism, on divinity and spirituality, but rather than attempt to exhaustively work through all of them, I want to just do what fantasy does best, which is ask the kind of question you can ask in a book that you can't always ask in the real world, which is, how do you survive after society ends? And incidentally, that's the same question that Octavia Butler asks in Parable of the Sower, and incidentally, they have one of the same answers. If you're not familiar with Elantris, it's a world where people get struck with this magical illness and they're ostracized from society. So as a result, there's a sort of post-society Lord of the Flies kind of world. There's gangs and there's violence and there's suffering. Parable, if you're not familiar, is a post-apocalypse of a different kind. It's just the end of capitalism. The rich people suck too many resources away, a populist president takes over and militarizes the world with a lot of technology, and people are left to fight for their own survival. And before I finish my point, we could absolutely get distracted, because Kaladin is asking a similar question to the question that Vin is asking. It is a theme in Brandon Sanderson's work to ask how far it is ethically permissible for you to go to protect yourself in a post-apocalyptic world. Can you kill to protect? I talked about this in my other video when we were talking about scalpels and utilitarian ethics, but incidentally, Octavia Butler also analyzes this same theme. It happens throughout the Parable series that the characters have to ask the same question, which is, how far are you allowed to go in order to survive when the world is falling apart around you? Vampiric hunger is the way that it gets characterized in this, and it's sort of like Walking Dead. Is it alright for you to kill, what's his name? Guy with a bat. Negan. Is it alright for you to kill Negan to survive? That question gets asked thematically throughout Octavia Butler's work in a bunch of different ways. But it really is a distraction, because the ethical questions are not how you actually survive the apocalypse. How you actually survive the apocalypse is you do what Raoden does, and you do what Lauren Oya Olamina does, which happens to be the same thing that Kaladin does, and the same thing that Lilith does, which is you build community in the face of the collapse of society. In the Lord of the Flies world, find a person who can make shoes and help them feel good about the fact that they can make shoes, because people need shoes. When you're surrounded by people who've had their humanity beaten out of them by society, find a person who's really good at making stew and help them feel good about the fact that they can make stew, because people need stew just as much as they need moral visionaries who can articulate messages of hope in times of darkness. Because the truth is that you do not survive the apocalypse, but it's possible that together We do. You cannot be the answer to the end of the world because there isn't an answer to the end of the world. And like Ruha Benjamin says when she quotes Octavia Butler in her book Viral Justice on page 16, at the end of the day, I am a student of the late great Octavia E. Butler, writer and builder of speculative worlds. To the question, what is there to do, she once responded, I mean, there's no single answer that will solve all our future problems. There's no magic bullet. Instead, there are thousands of answers, at least. You can become one of them if you choose to be. Sorry, my camera died. And at the risk of breaking the fourth wall a little and attempting to learn something from the previous election, I think that it is worth taking time to recognize that the left, broadly construed, is bad at building community. We, in our perfectionism and in our pursuit of relentless call-out culture, have built an ethos of operation that alienates even the most dedicated among us. Despite the fact that in both elements of my professional lives as a public school teacher and as a researcher and public educator that is dedicated towards liberal and progressive thinking, I often have the experience of not feeling welcome in leftist spaces because I know that I do not measure up to the ideals that we constantly virtue signal at each other as part of our strategy for surviving the apocalypse. So I know that isn't the most fun way to end a video, but if someone brings stew to the Friendsgiving and it isn't gluten-free, is it even an act of kindness? Yes, it still is an act of kindness. Just because something doesn't include everyone doesn't mean it isn't an act of community building, a desperately necessary act of community building in this new information apocalypse that we are living through together. I'm Charlie. This is That Makes Sense to Me. Patreon remains the best way to support me teaching and reading, and I'm sorry that I haven't made a lot of videos. I've been adjusting to this new teaching career, but I'm almost made Thanksgiving, which is a big milestone. It's my 5th year teaching, so I know that I'm going to start getting my capacity back after this point. I got this in the mail for free, 15 cents on the dollar, which I'll be trying to cover soon, and I got this in the mail for free, The Service Berry by Robin Wall Kimmerer, which I'm very excited to cover. Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass is one of my favorite books, and incidentally is also a lot about community building and ecosystems. I also have been working through The Half Has Never Been Told, about the history of slavery that doesn't get told. These books are not as much fun, but I want to cover them, but I want to cover them because they are important. Okay, that's all. Talk to you in the next one. Bye.